How you guys doing?
Doing
Good,
great.
good. Hey, thanks so
Excellent.
much for joining us, Rich. I'm Brian. It's nice to connect with you finally.
Yeah, absolutely. I know
Yeah.
it's a long time coming. Thanks
Yeah,
for having me.
for sure. Well, yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind kind of diving right into some of what's going on in your world with the Deadcast, which is, I mean, hats off. That's such an impressive piece of work that you guys are doing. I really enjoy it.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, it's definitely a labor of love. A lot of hours goes into every episode, and I'm grateful when we have a season like the current season, season 8, that's every other week instead of every week, because you don't really get a day off. Maybe one or two, but you're right back at it for 8 to 10 weeks. You're just Johnny on the spot. So yeah, a lot of work. Jesse puts a ton of work into research and writing, and then after we strategize for the season, and then it's over to me to put things together. And it's been really gratifying, though, to see how everybody has reacted to it. I think that's really the best thing to come out of it. And everybody from people, like longtime people inside the dead community, just regular everyday deadheads. Everybody seems to really dig it. I mean, I really haven't heard anybody go, "Nah, it's not for me," which is
Uh,
pretty gratifying.
yeah. I mean,
Right on.
the way I look at it is it's amazing journalism, whatever topic it is. And then it just happens to be a topic that, myself and Brian and hundreds of thousands of people are obsessed about. And it's amazing to me that's just you know, I feel like I've read everything that's ever been printed about the Grateful Dead and whatever. And still, when I listen to the podcast, still learning some cool stuff. I'm like, how did I never know that? And
You're not alone. It happens to us too. Every time that we put one together, we're learning too.
yeah,
So that's one of the great things about it. And it's like it just shows the depth and diversity of the Grateful Dead world, really. That a lot of people that are just like longtime deadheads and like super dead figures are just like, man, I never knew that.
uh,
Like the fact that Jesse uncovered that Irving Azoff worked for the Dead, even for a brief, whether it was a week or just a couple of days. Briefly, Irving Azoff worked for the Dead. That blew my mind. Finding out that Huey Lewis drove delivery trucks for the Springfield Creamery was a trip. And then when we asked him if he wanted to come on the podcast, he's like, "Oh yeah, totally." He couldn't wait to talk about it. You
yeah,
know,
So, is that the original hookup point for Huey Lewis and the Dead? Because in I guess it was in Autzen '93 or something. Huey Lewis was out there
yeah,
playing harp, and I was
right.
quite shocked. I just didn't know that was a connection. Do you know anything more about that?
Yeah, because that was pretty early on. You know what I mean? He was driving trucks back then, back in the day. They weren't even. I think he said they weren't even refrigerated trucks. They would just put the stuff in there and haul ass to the destination before it went bad. But yeah, and anybody who has lived in Marin County, I lived in Marin County for the '90s. You can't be a musician and live in Marin County and not get hooked up with somebody that works for the Dead. It's just going to happen.
so you're playing a show next week in what is it, the Americana Fest?
Yeah, I'm doing 3 shows. Americana Fest is kind of like South by Southwest for Nashville. You know what I
Nice.
mean? There's no film component to it like there is, with South by, but there will be a truckload of musicians descending into the city next week. Everybody who lives here has house guests next week.
Nice.
And there's just like South by, there's all kinds of official showcases and unofficial showcases. Anybody who's got a venue is doing stuff. So yeah, I'm playing at the Five Spot, since we're talking about venues, which is a great club in East Nashville, right in Five Points, and a place called Nectar Urban Cantina, which is over here in Donaldson, where I live, which is an awesome place. I got a great outdoor stage, a nice field, so it's a
Nice.
nice
Cool.
big area. And then playing another place called Cletus, a beer garden that's pretty cool, which is actually a precursor gig It's happening during Americana Week, but it's a precursor gig for a festival we're having the last weekend of the month called Touch of Brews. And
Nice.
that's put on by Terrapin Brewing Company
Okay.
and a bunch of other people. And this year there's, Jeff Matson from DSO is like one of the artists at large. Midnight North, Graham Lesch's band is playing.
Yeah.
So it's
Awesome.
starting to pick up some steam.
That's awesome. I when I was in Nashville last time, I saw we were there. Actually, we have like an annual guys trip where we go and it's like focused around culinary, and we went to Nashville to eat some hot chicken.
Where'd you go?
Well, we went to Prince's, we went to Hattie B's,
Okay.
Been to Bolton's.
Mm-hmm.
Not that trip. I'm obsessed with fried chicken. I own buffalo wing restaurants in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
And I got obsessed with Nashville hot chicken a few years ago. So we took a trip to Nashville. We were there. Fish was in town, and Bobby Weir was in town. And the fish show was at what's the pavilion that's on the water, like Entelos or
no, Ascend.
Ascend. Okay.
Yeah.
I just remember the sound, just being in Nashville with all the music there. The sound was amazing. Is that something that you find, like speaking of venues, like in Nashville, is just the attention to the detail and sound?
Yeah, I think so. I think, well, it depends on the venue, but yeah, the larger concert venues typically have great sound. And like Bobby coming to town, I saw the Wolf Brothers at the Ryman, and then the next night they played Memphis, and they came back the next night and they played at Third Man Records in the Blue Room. Now, the Blue Room is the venue at Third Man. It's Jack White's place.
Yeah.
And it's small. It holds 200 people, maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
And the sound in the Blue Room was better than the sound at the Ryman by far.
Yeah.
And then I just saw the Pretenders at the Blue Room a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago almost. And the sound, again, just impeccable. They've got it dialed in there, man. That room sounds fantastic. There's no corners. It's all rounded. So it's like they've got big round arcs in the corners of the ceiling, and then the backs, there's no square edges. So but I mean, there were so many people sardined into that room for both of those shows that you could have had a concrete floor, walls and ceiling, and it would have sounded okay.
Right.
But,
nice.
yeah.
It's funny. When I was at that fish show in Nashville, Bobby came out, since he was playing the next night, came out for like a large part of the second set. I was standing next to this old Deadhead. It was his first fish show, and I've been seeing the Dead for a long time, and all of a sudden Bobby comes out, plays like the whole second set. It's like, yeah, this happens every show.
Yeah, right. I know. Well, they just announced some more shows, I think, for later in the year here at Bridgestone, I believe. Fish is playing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we've got a new venue, well, relatively new venue, down south, the Caverns. I don't know if you guys have heard about that one, but it's actually in a cave.
Yeah.
And next weekend we have an embarrassment of riches, as happens frequently in Nashville. Little Feat is playing 2 nights at the Ryman, Friday and Saturday. And well, that's 2 weeks from now. I'm sorry, not next week's Americana, but they're doing the albums tour. So they're playing Dixie Chicken and Sailing Shoes in their entirety, one each night.
Oh, wow.
And then the Friday night is O'Teal and Friends down at the Caverns. And the band has Steve Kimmock and Melvin Seals. And those two guys right away, you're like, wow, Dwayne Betts is playing with them too.
Nice.
So that's good. And you can camp down there. So there's like a scene. There'll be a little shakedown street. It's really cool.
That sounds awesome. I did see an iteration of O'Teal and Friends in Portland at a venue called Revolution Hall. Kimmock was there. Remember, he played Stella Blue on pedal steel. It was pretty sweet. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, Caverns is definitely like, we've gotten to this venue Llama venture because we've been seeing shows for a really long time, and just realize how important the venue is to a show and the experience, and just how many questions people and we have like going to shows all the time, and just felt like there just needed to be a resource for that, just to help people to answer all those questions that you have before a show. Like we're talking about sound, like when you go to a show, like where is the best sound in the venue, all sorts of things, even like where to go eat hot chicken, the best place to eat
Yeah.
hot chicken before show, stuff like
All right. Well, we're not done talking about hot chicken yet. Did you go to the
that.
Prince's down south of town?
We went to the
Which
the
one?
original Prince's.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what was your order?
Gosh, this was about 8 years ago, but I got some
Oh, so you
wings.
went to the one on Ewing before it burned down.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
believe
that
so.
was the jam. Yeah.
Yeah.
Little
Uh,
strip mall place with white wooden
yeah.
booths.
Yeah,
Yep,
absolutely. Yeah.
that's it.
No air conditioning,
No.
if I remember correctly. But yeah, I got some wings. I think I got I like super spicy stuff. So I think I got some of the extra hot wings, and then I probably got like the bone-in breast, I believe.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, just kind of kept it pretty straightforward.
That's it, man. Bone and breast.
Yeah,
That's my order.
yeah. So yeah, so good.
Yeah.
Hattie B's is a little spicier. Um,
Hattie B's. I think that the problem with Hattie B's, in my mind, it's gentrified hot chicken a little bit in
yeah,
that well, the sides are really quality there. The sides beat the sides at Prince's, but I don't go to Prince's for
right sides.
black eyed pea salad. I go for a breast quarter hot and some fries with the
Yeah,
shake on top of them.
yeah,
But the Hattie B's is spicy without the flavor. Prince's gets hot, but it has this savory flavor to it too
yeah. A
that
little
nobody else
richer.
has. Now, the hottest hot chicken I think is Bolton's. I
Yeah,
don't know if you experienced that, but I mean theirs is
yeah,
just like
yeah. Bolton's was that was super hot.
punishing. Yeah.
Had Speaking of hot, I could talk about hot chicken all day. Have you ever been to a place called Howlin' Ray's in Los Angeles or heard of it?
I've heard of it. I've actually driven by it. And
Yeah, the
yeah, I don't
lines.
know. I have never been. Is it good?
It's I think it's the best that I've had. Um, at least like it's not traditional in the sense of like they have a sandwich there.
Uh-huh.
Um, it's amazing, and the lines there. They just opened a second one, but the lines in their Chinatown location. Like I think we waited for like 3 hours.
Wow.
Uh, and
Okay, so it isn't Helen Ray's, isn't that like the niece of Andre Prince, the lady who owns Prince's?
no, this is a guy. He's a chef. Like his name is Chef Johnny Ray, but he
Okay.
did go out to like he's like a bona fide chef, but just loves hot chicken. He went out to Nashville and kind of staged out there at some restaurants, but he's definitely into the history of it, and
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
faithful reinterpretations of it.
Yeah.
Really good.
So I've never been to Nashville, so I've never had any of the hot chicken that you guys are talking about. But Jordan, you're in the Pacific Northwest. There's a place called I just looked it up. It's called Sisters and Brothers. I went on a helicopter ride with my buddy who owns this helicopter company, and he's like, "We got to go to this hot chicken place." And it's right next to Boeing Field. It's this tiny little shack on this road you would never go down, and it is really, really, really good. Very good. So Jordan, next time you go to Seattle, it's not that far away.
Yeah.
So check it. It's like they play punk rock. It's super hot in there. It's this great little dive. So put that on your list.
Yeah, that's got a great name too.
It is. Yeah. I had to look it up, but it really fits. It kind of ties the room together here.
Absolutely. You'll need a podcast episode about Sisters and Brothers song and hot chicken.
Yep. Come on down, little children. I'll tell you about hot chicken.
Rich has an album called Hot Chicken Wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty psyched.
Yeah, and there's a song in there called Hot Chicken and an Ice Cold 40, and it's about going to Prince's.
Oh, nice.
You get the original Prince's on Ewing. So there used to be it's not there anymore, either of them, but there was a little mini mart on the corner, like a gas station. And after we'd order, we'd walk over and grab a 40 and bring it back over with one of those styrofoam coffee cups. And you pour it under the table so they don't catch you. But, it's like something about an ice cold Budweiser and hot chicken.
To bring it totally full circle, I am right here at KHENLP 106.9 here in Colorado, Salida. And the chicken is you couldn't plan this. You couldn't plan this any better.
I know. I don't know. Do any of you guys have home chickens? Chickens at home?
I do not. I do not
I
have
don't.
chickens. Nope.
My neighbors do. I'm actually looking at chickens right now, so I can
So
smell them. But
you probably get gifted eggs on a regular
I,
basis.
we get gifted rats, I think, from
Oh my God. That's what I'm finding out. We've got backyard chickens, and it's like the bugs are killing me this summer.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need bats. You need bats with your chickens to eat your bugs.
Man, I'm telling you what.
Yeah, I think people like, if being that I own chicken wing restaurants, if I had chickens in my yard, I think people might be a little raise an eyebrow a little bit.
Still worried about you.
So Rich, can you just tell us more like how the it seems like you're involved in all sorts of stuff and interesting background and involved in all sorts of stuff. You're getting back to the podcast, like how did that come about? Like how did you become the host of such an amazing podcast?
Well, before the Deadcast, I was doing the Rhino podcast for Rhino Records. And Rhino Records is the record company. It's a part of Warner Music. It's the catalog division for Warner Music, which means anything that isn't a new frontline release, let's say like the Grateful Dead's music, when you re-release Wake of the Flood. It's the 50th anniversary, and we have a 50th anniversary edition coming out this year. So I've been working with Rhino Records since 2006 and doing mostly radio marketing for them. Hello. And setting up promotions when I have somebody who's willing to do interviews, booking interviews, that sort of thing. And when I interviewed for that job, they told me, well, one of the things that we're really interested or we're really excited about is that we just did a deal with the Grateful Dead and we're going to be releasing everything. And I basically I slapped the desk of the guy that was interviewing me. And I said, if you don't hire me, you're blowing it. And then I just went into it. I'm like, I can't even tell you how many shows I've been to. My first show was at Long Beach in 1985. I saw blah, 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 blah. Just went down the list. And needless to say, I got the job. I think my enthusiasm was a little bit over the top, but he got the point, So
yeah, I
started doing what used to be, and they still run them, they're radio specials. So it's like an hour-long program, like, tune in this Saturday and hear how Led Zeppelin made, Houses of the Holy, that kind of thing. And there'll be interview segments with the band interspersed with songs from the album. So podcasts are basically just a different version of a radio special, right? For more or less. Can be, depending, you know what I mean? Music ones for sure. So you have some limitations, like you can't play the entire song. We can use 30-second clips, and that's like a fair use without having to pay licensing fees. And I was doing the Rhino podcast, producing that, and I said, why are we not doing a Grateful Dead podcast? So we pitched it, and we were working on it for a long time. And Doran Tyson, who was the person that started it with me, came to me after we were kind of banging our heads trying to figure out how to get it to work. We didn't know exactly what form it was going to take yet. And she's like, we've got this writer we've been working with, Jesse Jarno, and I think he'd be perfect for the Deadcast. So we started talking to him. He came on board, and it just, we started in 2018. Took a trip to the Bay Area, interviewed a ton of people in person, people that worked for Grateful Dead Records. Bob Matthews, who was friends with Jerry since the Palo Alto days and was actually the original bass player in New Riders of the Purple Sage, became their engineer, worked with them on Europe 72, a bunch of records before that, So we got all this great time with everybody recording it, and then the pandemic hit. And it kind of threw a wrench in the gears, so to speak. But we finally came up with a format that we liked, and we started with Working Man's Dead, doing a track by track. Did the same thing with American Beauty for the second season, because both those records came out within about 6 months of each other in 1970. Yeah. And then that was it. We were off to the races. And it's crazy to think about it. We've got over 5 million downloads now. Yeah, of the series, the entire series, and oh, wow. Yeah, it's just taken off like crazy. I think the ratings on Apple Podcast, it's like it's like 4.9 stars or something. It's just,
Yeah.
it's people love it. And I gotta give huge props to Jesse, because it would not exist without him. He was such a key critical component that Doran suggested, and it's just absolutely perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah. It seems like it's interesting hearing that, because it sounds like the way you guys work off of each other in the podcast, it just sounds like you guys have known each other for forever. And
It's funny, yeah, you feel that, but it's like some people you meet and you just kind of hit it off with right away, and you're like, oh, I can tell this person's really going to be a good friend. It's
yeah,
like it's just so easy. It's really easy with Jesse. We found a way to work together, and he's in Brooklyn, I'm in Nashville,
yeah,
but the way that you can work today, here we are talking. We do most of our interviews by Zoom. We like to go out and do a bunch in person, and we did another in-person run at the beginning of this year in February, and it's great just to get some hang time with him. Whenever I go to New York, we always try to hang out a little bit.
awesome.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's almost like your podcast is becoming like an important piece of the history of the Grateful Dead. And you know how like the archives are in, what is it, UC Santa Cruz?
Yeah.
Seems like your like podcasts are like belong in there.
Well, thank you. That's really nice of you to say. I mean, I was thinking that, I was hoping that it would be meaningful enough to actually get to that point. And then we were interviewing Donna we've done probably 6 or 7 interviews with her now. She's so great. But on her own, she just goes, you guys are a part of it now. She's like, people are going to be figuring out about the Grateful Dead 100 years from now, and they're going to find your podcast and just eat it up.
Yeah.
And I'm just like,
it's an oral history. It's a perfect companion to the whole auditory experience, and I don't know if this could have been done 20 years ago. I mean, technologically aside, I think the time is so right now, and we've all had an opportunity to go through the dearth of archival material digitally, which we couldn't really do long ago. Like now you can kind of, if you want to go through every Bertha from 85, that's very easy to do now. You could do it back then, but not as easily. And I just wonder if the way people now consume music has made all of this a lot more, I don't know, possible, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think one of the reasons that the Deadcast is popular is that Deadheads have a voracious appetite for all things Grateful Dead. And even before the internet, and even including the internet, I mean, we have an episode about netheads, that are like, Deadheads were some of the first users of the internet, period, besides the government, outside the government, because they were working for the government, and they're like, hey, we could network and figure out what the band's playing that night. I can log on and see what the set list was. So people were doing this. There were guys, it was their jam. After it, they'd get online, they'd figure out how to get online, and then they would post set lists. So going back before that, though, tape trading, all of that, and like you're saying, 20 years ago, you could figure out which Bertha, or great example of that. I follow Al Franken on Twitter, and he was saying, oh yeah, my favorite Althea is this one. And he says why. He said, it's not perfect, it's my favorite. And so I listened to it, and I hear what he's saying about
something.
Well, it's earlier than that. It's like 82 or 83 or something in there. But yeah, Jerry's voice sounds a little weary. He was getting kind of weary in that period, which is really weird because like 2 years before that, his voice sounded so crystal clear and perfect. And 3 or 4 years after that, after he got out of the coma, he sounded great again, but his guitar playing in this version is just sublime. And I totally see what he's talking about with that. And, he found that before the internet. He loved that version, but it's because he collected tapes. And he probably had a thing that was a long journey for him to find that version. Now you can go to re-listen or listen to the Dead, right? And you can, or go to the Dead Compendium, and you can find all the Altheas, and you can sample them all, put a set list together, a playlist. It's crazy.
For sure. I was talking to Brian the other day, and interesting thing happened to me, like with your podcast, it's happened like a bunch of times. I remember when I was in college, we had this ongoing conversation. A roommate of mine, who just always talk about the fact he's like friend of the devil. It just lyrically, it just works so much better fast. And and I didn't disagree with him, but I was listening to your episode about Friend of the Devil and just talking about how it came about with them playing a slow Friend of the Devil by listening, like Jerry listening to Loggins and Messina version of it and thinking that was cool, and like that's why the Dead started playing it slow. I forwarded that episode to my buddy. You know, I hadn't seen him in like years. I'm like, here's how that happened.
Yeah. Kind of a mind blower, right? I mean, it's crazy. And you know, I think one of the things, and I'd like to get more into this, but kind of the mythology of the Grateful Dead, or maybe that's not the right word, but like the serendipity that happens with Deadheads and the band, and just strange occurrences in the desert, right? I mean, to borrow one of their titles, but it was like that. I don't know if I got that right, or is it unique? Is it strange occurrences in the desert? What's that? It's like isn't it off of anyway?
Lisa, you're an English teacher.
Yeah, I can't remember, but just how they were playing. They were in L.A. in '66, I think, right? When they did the Watts acid test, and they lived down in a house, I think off of Adams Street, but they were playing the Ouija board one night, and this has been confirmed. We interviewed a guy who was there, and he was living with the band, and he was driving the truck for them. And he's like, I definitely learned how to drive a truck on LSD. He would drive around with Pigpen a lot in this equipment truck, but they were playing the Ouija board one night, and I'm going to get the wording wrong, the exact wording, but it was something about the Dead will leave the stage in 95.
No, wow.
I mean, like, just weird shit, you know.
That's crazy. Like, that's crazy. It's crazy.
There's stuff beyond the veil that we don't understand, that
Yeah.
they seem to tap into. 66.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that. Not funny. I hate that they ended that. But this buddy that I was talking about, he wasn't even a huge Deadhead. He was talking about like Friend of the Devil, how it works so much better, faster. We walked out of the last Soldier Field show, and he said to me, that's the last Grateful Dead show there's ever going to be. And I was like,
oh, really?
Yeah. And I remember thinking, like, you might be right, actually. But just how you're talking about like serendipitous things, it just.
Yeah, mystical things. There's definitely mystical things that happen all the time. I mean, really weird. Super weird.
Isn't there a fire on the mountain, Mount St. The volcano in Montana?
Yeah.
Wasn't that
Washington?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that happened at the same time?
Jordan has a story about that, but then I swear I checked the set list because I wanted to play it once on my radio show and talk about that, and I couldn't find it. I don't know that the Dead was playing in Seattle, because your story that you had said once, Jordan, when you opened the restaurant, was that the Dead was playing near Seattle and played Fire on the Mountain, that like in that time period.
Yeah, I think
what I had heard.
There were a couple. There were different eruptions from Mount St. Helens, and I think one of the lesser eruptions, from what I understand, that the Dead were playing. And yeah, I don't know. Rich, can you confirm or deny?
Not off the top of my head, but no, I've heard that story too.
Yeah.
Not to out your legacy of Fire on the Mountain, Jordan, at all. I did. I tried to play it on my radio show, and I was probably scrambling at the last minute and was like, well, I can cross-reference this, like you're talking about the internet. I can find when did Mount St. Helens erupt, and then where was the Grateful Dead, and I could find the show and I could find the song, and it didn't work for me. But yeah, maybe it was during a different eruption. I'm sure a volcano doesn't just.
Maybe it'll erupt tonight. We'll see.
And somebody will have been playing.
Somebody will be covering the Fire on the Mountain in Seattle, because there's more Grateful Dead cover bands now than I feel like
than ever before.
I mean,
yeah. And I remember it wasn't too long ago where it was just like, yeah, the Grateful Dead weren't hip. You know what I mean? I think they're more popular now than they ever have been. And to the point where I think the Grateful Dead is really its own genre of music. You can go to any town
Oh,
and
yeah.
any place that has live music, that's like a bar with live music, there'll be an open mic night, there'll be a blues night, there might be a poetry night, and there's a Grateful Dead night. And it's just,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and just the fact that there are some big name, major headlining touring acts, J-Rad,
Yeah.
and they're fantastic. And
yeah,
but from that catalog, it's amazing. 50 years later,
selling
plus
out Red Rocks.
Selling out
incredible,
Red Rocks. And
incredible.
they do
selling out
play
Red
other
Rocks.
songs occasionally that are not the Dead, but mostly.
Yeah,
It's
but DSO doesn't, and they sell out Red Rocks
Right.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get such a kick out of all the Bobby iterations of what he's doing. Wolf Brother, I think it's really interesting. And when he was
Yeah.
with the orchestra, just and I remember hearing him talk about how there's so many layers to the material. And when he was talking about like joining with, or the new version of the band with O'Teal and Mayer several years back, and he was saying, just a few years into it, he's like, well, we can't even pass judgment on ourselves yet, basically, because we need like time to marinate. This band is just a few years old. We need much more time to grow. And it's just kind of interesting hearing that kind of approach to the music, where it's so completely different from so many other folks who get into music for other reasons. But I just always thought that was interesting. And he just continues to explore his own material in different versions. And I think that's kind of amazing. You
Yeah.
can find so many different levels and layers of his own material, or Jerry's, whatever. It's just, yeah, I think it's a huge credit to him. And yeah, I dig him. I'm so glad that he's still doing what he's doing.
What do you guys think about the lineup for Playing Dead down in Mexico in January?
I think it sounds interesting. I'm curious, like, as to like Rick from Goose and Derek Trucks, are they like going to be like an integral part of Bobby's band, or is it sort of like guest sit-ins, or it all just kind of remains to be seen? But it sounds, I mean,
because I didn't see Barry Sless's name on that. Did you?
no, did
Yeah,
not.
he's not listed. So that's kind of the second guitar in Wolf Brothers, right?
Yeah, that's what I was
Steel
wondering, who
guitar.
that. Yeah,
So I think it's probably going to be, they're going to maybe rotate people in and out to
yeah,
play with them. But I mean, I love Derek Trucks. He's maybe one of the best slide players that's ever been.
yeah.
But do I really hear him playing on a lot of those songs? Some of them certainly, but I'd like to see what they do with it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Well,
that was
yeah,
intrigued.
just seeing Trucks with Fish, I was quite interested. I'd never seen them play together. And I can't remember where it was. It was very recently.
It's in upstate New York. At
At the benefit shows. Yeah. And very, very interesting. And great, I thought. Like, not at all what I had imagined. It's just so interesting how the styles on paper seem so different, but once they're on stage, they make it completely work.
And then Fish doesn't have guests. It's been years, a long time since they've had a guest on stage. They're just so locked in with what they're doing. But I think it speaks volumes about Derek Trucks, just the fact that they brought him in. And
where was that Derek Trucks came on stage? I didn't know that happened.
Fish just did two benefit concerts for the flooding.
Oh, the flood benefit, yeah.
And he came out for like a large chunk of the second set on the second night. So yeah, it's we've
Susan
seen
Tedeschi, her voice, she has a version of Angel Montgomery that kind of teases in and does sugary, and she's just, her voice is sublime. I mean, she has one of the most beautiful voices, in my opinion. I know that's an opinion, but what they could do with that, with her in there, could really rock the boat.
Oh yeah. She is a great singer. I caught Tedeschi Trucks and Los Lobos at the Fox Theater in St. Louis last year.
Oh, cool.
That was amazing. Okay, talking about venues.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite venues I've ever seen a show at. The Fox is so ornate inside in St. Louis. I mean, everything from there's a grand staircase that goes up as you go into the lobby area, and there's two lions on the edges of the staircase, and their eyes glow red in and out.
Oh,
It's
wow.
just, and it's just ornate appointments everywhere you look. And so I took a walk around it, and I think there's 5 stories in that building to get up to the top balcony level. You can't find a corner of any place in there that isn't ornate, where they have, we're like, let's not worry about doing the molding up here in the 5th floor in the corner. I found the
Right.
most far away corner to look at, and nope, it's done all the way to,
Yeah. That's the thing, is so many venues these days, you don't get the feeling that the venue cares whether it's about the sound or the experience. And, you just get the feeling of just they're trying to pinch you or whatever. And that's part of what we're trying to do also, is like, let's focus and showcase some of these venues, like classic ones. And like, there are some, newer ones too, like, Caverns is relatively new, and all that. What are some other venues that come to mind? And 2-part question: would you ever do a podcast episode about venues and different, who knows, dead shows at different venues?
well, yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that, when the St. Louis box came out, we covered that. And in the St. Louis box, there's basically 2 venues they played at during that run, which was 70 to 73, 74. And they got too big for the Fox, basically, and had to move to the Kiel Auditorium. And that's where my folks incidentally saw the Dead for the first time in 73. And but yeah, we went into the Fox about, what it was like there, and people that were at the shows. We found people that were, we like to try to get people that had, were actually there, and get, some firsthand accounts on things. But
Nice.
the Madison Square Garden, same thing. There was a Madison Square Garden set that came out. So we definitely focused on, Madison Square Garden. There's,
Yeah.
Some venues, I think everybody kind of has a bucket list of venues that they'd like to see bands at. One of mine is Royal Albert Hall. Never been to a show there. Would love to see a show at Royal Albert Hall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that for so many people too, where you live, you travel to see venues and you have your
Mhm.
bucket list, but then you also have your hometown venue that like the back of your hand, and you've seen, in Colorado, we've got Red Rocks, and, Nashville, I'm sure there's so many in the Ryman, but like you were talking about the Blue Room,
Mhm.
you have those places that you've seen so many bands there, and like the back of your hand, and they just take on a life of their own as a venue. It
Yeah.
becomes a part of the experience in a way that, it's more than just a place to go see the music. It feels like home. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's so nice. Like, that's what I like about Venue Llama, is if I'm going to go somewhere, I want to ask my friends, like, if they live there, I'm going to call them and be like, hey man, tell me about the venue, tell me about this theater in St. Louis, tell me about the Fox, tell me about the Ryman. And like, if I was going to go to the Caverns, oh my gosh, I would feel like I would need to call someone that I knew to help me out and be like, so I'm going to go underground, and then like, what's going to happen to me?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's cool that there's a place, if you don't know anyone that lives by there, that you can kind of go on and just browse through what people have to say about these
Yeah. Agreed. It's kind of like the One Bite Pizza app. Are you guys hip to that guy, Dave Portnoy? He's a little bit of a,
Uh-huh.
Heard the
I'm
name.
finding out more about his personal beliefs, which is kind of turning me off a little bit.
For
But
sure.
his pizza reviews are totally awesome. I'm totally.
He's in our
hooked.
last video, actually. There's a
Oh,
clip
was
of
he?
him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, was that the guy that was eating that Regina pizza in
Yep.
Boston? Or
Yeah,
yeah.
for
Okay.
sure. But yeah, but it'd be so funny to do something like that, venue wise. But I was just wondering, like you had mentioned that your first show was back in '85, and through the course, I mean, the whole venue world has changed. And then listening to some of the stuff on your podcast, hearing just the whole promotional aspects and the logistics involved in booking a venue, that was honestly mind blowing. And hearing some of those shows were like 3 weeks out when they were finalizing arrangements. I mean, unbelievable. But what were some favorite venues that you went to or saw the Dead at that might not be around anymore or are still around?
Yeah. Used to love to go to Irvine Meadows Amphitheater.
Hey, that's where I had my first concert.
Okay, right on. Who'd you see?
My first concert was New Order, PIL, and the Sugar Cubes.
Oh yeah, nice one.
Yeah.
Good one. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I liked it because well, it was super sweet because my dad was working down in Orange County, even though we lived in LA, and he wouldn't come home every night. They bought a condo down there right in Laguna Hills. So I mean, we were right by
Nice.
Irvine Meadows. So we would go down and take over this condo. There'd be like 20 heads crashed out everywhere in it. You know what I mean? And like I would end up spending 4 or 5 hours cleaning the place after the shows were over before I went home, so I didn't get yelled at by my folks. But that was a good one just for that reason. And the lot scene there was really good too. They didn't allow you to camp there, but the Greek Theater and the Frost in the Bay Area were awesome places to see the band play. One of my favorite shows of all time was out at Calaveras County in Angels Camp in August of '87. It's called the Mountain Air Music Festival out in Gold Country. And it was David Lindley, El Rayo X, Santana, and the Dead for 2 nights.
Oh,
And
that's
Santana came out and jammed with the Dead for the last 2 songs of the first set both nights. And there was a Good Morning Little Schoolgirl bust out that hadn't happened since Pig died. And they had an air show, literally like the biplanes doing tricks, guys dropping out of parachutes. It was a camping weekend, just fantastic. Just everything about that weekend was great. But that was, so they built the stage for the show and then took it down afterwards, I think. So, other places, like used to love to see Jerry play at the Wiltern in Los Angeles or the Warfield in San Francisco. Those were great places. One of my favorite venues of all time was the old Sweetwater in Mill Valley, in a very small club, but that place, I got a job there working the door, and then they moved me over to bartender, which didn't last long. It wasn't my jam, but I can't tell you how many. I saw the very first Rat Dog show there.
Did you hear that show when like Jerry, like back in the day, like when Elvis Costello?
I was not there. That was before my time, but yeah, there's pictures. There's video of that actually. Yeah, with him and James Burton. And I think Sammy was there that night too.
I think so. Didn't like Jerry borrow Elvis's guitar or
he
vice
did.
versa or something like that?
Yeah, he got on James Telecaster and didn't like it, and then got back on the Jazzmaster. But that was great. But the Scaring the Children 3, it was Jay, Rob Wasserman, and Bobby on acoustic guitar. And Bob was so deftly playing with feedback out of his monitor. He would lean forward and get it to start to feed back, and he'd back up just enough to be able to control it. He was really in the zone. And it was one of those great nights where Jeannie, the owner, said, "Lock the doors, we're closed," which meant it was time to have a private party. So we locked the doors, and so it's just, Bob in there. And I think Rob had already taken off. He lived in Mill Valley. They used to run into him next door at the health food store. Literally came around a corner and almost bumped heads with Rob Wasserman.
That's awesome. But, that's one of those nights you're like, I'm not going to go home early.
No,
Sorry.
I didn't have anything to go home to at that point anyway. I was living in a closet in San Anselmo. But Bob's like, "Hey, let's go up to the house." So we're like, okay. So we all go up to fucking Bob's house. And Bob's bathroom was his trophy room. So he lived in that A-frame. I think he still has that house. But you go into his bathroom, that's where all his gold records were. And right above the toilet, he had his Little League trophy. So it was like, it's classic. Just, trippy night. Yeah. But that venue, I mean, shit, Little Village, saw those guys talk about great slide players. Ry Cooder was in that band. Anson Funderburg, Jeannie was from Texas, and she got all these Texas musicians to come out. Stephen Bruton, Marsha Ball, Anson Funderburg with Sam Myers, Delbert McClinton. I mean, I saw bands that blew my mind. And when she decided she was going to retire and sell the club, everybody was telling her, don't do it. And I wrote her a letter and I said, sell the club, do it. You got to do what's right for you. And then I said, here's why it was important to me. And I'm not going to lose anything by you closing it, because this is what I gained. And I told her, it was just like, really, I graduated from college, started going to the Sweetwater and working at the Sweetwater. And that's when I got my musical education. And I listed all these bands and what I got from them. And like, Anson Funderburg, learning how to play T-Bone Walker riffs, watching this guy play because he was such a devotee. And she wrote me the nicest letter back. And that's like, out of everything that I've saved in this world, why didn't I save that letter? I don't know. I can't find it to save the life of him, but it was the sweetest letter from Jeannie. God rest her soul. She was such a wonderful woman. But that's like the stories. Oh my God, the parties in that place. Good God. John Lee Hooker coming out. His band plays a song. He gets up, and he's old, right? He was in his 80s at that point, sits down in the chair, leans forward to the mic, and just goes, how, over the boogie. And then the roof just blew off the place. Off the place. Everybody went so apeshit.
That's awesome. That's so cool to hear. And just with what we're doing and being into venues, and for us, that's what it's all about. It's just like these experiences are just such momentous experiences in our lives, and the venues play such a, and the thing is too, it's like even crappy venues, you can have some amazing experiences there too. Like,
oh sure.
I live in Portland, a Crystal Ballroom where, the Dead played there, was like in 60, I don't know, 69 or 68, something like that. But the venue sucks on a lot of levels, but the sound isn't great, and you get, bumped into all the time. But at the same time, it's got so much history, and you see some amazing shows there. And, there's something to be said too, just for certain rooms that don't make sense.
I like what Rich said. It's not even like, it's sad when things close and when things change and you have to move on. And I've had some venues that I love that aren't around anymore, but it's not about whether it's still there. It's about what you got to do while it was, the times you got to have while it was there. And
you never lose those experiences, like Ventura County Fairgrounds. That was one of my very favorite places to see the Dead, because the campground was literally a dirt lot right on the beach. Right on the beach. And there's a surf break there called California Street. It's a right point. And a couple of times, 87 was one of those times, there was a swell while the surf, so you'd wake up in the morning and surf, see the show, you know what I mean? It was amazing. And that was, I had a mystical Jerry experience. Talk about a mystical experiences with the Dead. We were probably, I don't know, 6 or 7. Well, it was general admission, so there weren't seated rows, but that, 6 or 7 people deep right in front of Jerry. And they go into Morning Dew, and he just like locks with me and my buddy, like right there. And he's like, I can't tell if he's looking at me or if he's looking at my buddy Sean, but he's looking right at us. Even at the point where, when he leans in for that solo, and he would push up his glasses like that, right? When he's about to get serious, he never looked away from us the whole frickin' song. And I loved that song more now than then. You get different things out of it. But I'll tell you what, as soon as the song was over, I knew exactly what it was about. And I had never thought about what that song was about before. And I feel like Jerry imparted that meaning to me. It's really a trip. There's weird things happening with the Grateful Dead that we can't understand because they're on another plane.
Right. Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah. You just gave me chills hearing that. That's
it's for real. I talked to David Gans about that, and I'm like, and he's like, oh yeah, what does it mean? And I'm like, they're talking about 2 pilots in the Enola Gay dropping atomic bombs. And he's like, I never thought about it, before then, but it was just like, I was enhanced at the show, certainly, but I was an open channel, ready to receive.
Yeah. That's amazing. Thanks so much. I know that you're a busy guy, and you've got things to do, you're welcome to, hang and chat with us, but understand that you also may have to go and practice for your gigs next week. But,
Yeah, I am off to a rehearsal. I've had a busy day today. I've finished 2 podcasts and I'm starting on next week's Deadcast already today too. So.
Oh, wow. Well, we
Yeah.
super appreciate you joining us. Yeah, this is, it's an honor for us, and we're just kind of starting out, and your podcast is an inspiration for us. And, just hearing some of these stories and hearing your story, it's been awesome to get to know you and hear some of this stuff.
Well,
For
thanks
sure.
very much, guys. Hey, I got one more
Thank
for you, Jordan. Now, 93, I went up to see the Dead in Eugene, and there was a sideshow at the Holiday Inn. It was Zero and Los Lobos.
Oh, wow.
Is that building still around? Did they still have shows there?
Well, so I grew up in New York. Like my
Okay.
first show was at MSG. That's the first time I saw the Dead. Lisa went to school in Eugene, so she would know better about that.
The Holiday Inn, like kind of by the Willamette right there. The hotel right there.
I think so.
I never saw a show there, but
Yeah, maybe they
I
just
don't
said
know.
we need a place to play, and they said let's do a concert here. We can put it together. We'll bring in a sound system.
I can picture it though. It was
Yeah.
kind of like a tall hotel and sort of old school looking.
It was
like
a rectangular,
from the 70s.
rectangular room. You know what I mean? And they set up kind of right in the middle of the long part of one of the walls.
Mm-hmm.
So it was more wide than long than deep.
Sure.
But Zero was great. I've always been a Kimmock fan,
Yeah.
and that was another band we used to see as we were.
You know, I
Nice.
have a question though before you go, because you were
Yeah.
saying everyone has their bucket list, right?
Mhm.
So, like, you've seen so many shows and you've been to so many places. Are there any left? What's on your bucket list?
Domestically, well, I want to play like all of these places that I've been to a bunch that I haven't played yet, but I want to. But one of the venues in the States that I haven't been to, and I got to figure out what show I'm going to go see it there, is the Capitol Theater,
Oh,
north
yeah.
of New York.
Yes,
I have not
sure.
been to a show there, and I absolutely want to go to a show there.
Yeah. They just announced
on.
J-Rad, I think, announced like a 3-day run.
That would be a good show. That'd
Jan-
be a fun show there.
Yeah, I'll see you there.
But maybe Phil's probably going to do another run of shows. Who
Yeah.
knows? Maybe New Year's shows. Maybe they'll announce some Phil New Year's shows, or
Yeah.
I don't
I'll
know.
take it. Yeah, for sure. Totally. Yeah, that's a whole nother episode, just talking about like the people behind the venues, like Peter Shapiro, and how some
Oh
of
my
these
God.
shows come to fruition and all of that. So
Yeah. The modern day Bill Graham,
yeah,
in a way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, thanks so much for having me on, everybody.
Yeah, appreciate it very much. We'll keep doing what you're doing. Can't wait to hear some more episodes, and hopefully we'll meet and chat down the road. Thanks,
right.
Rich.
All right.
Cheers,
Thanks.
guys.
Take care. Bye bye.
See ya. Bye-bye.